Summon Night 6 Lost Borders. This game came here as a surprise considering it's a crossover from the Summon Night series. I say this because most of these games were never released outside of Japan and we only got a few spin-offs. At least we also got Summon Night 5 on the PSP though. That one is actually fun. So this strategy RPG on the PS4 and PS Vita doesn't stay behind at all. It might not appeal to all considering you'll be playing with characters you mostly don't know, but hey, it's still a very fun game to play with some visual novel elements and a lot of good character development. Sadly, most of the voice acting here is terrible, but the neat gameplay mechanics will easily make up for it. I didn't expect too much of the story considering it's a crossover, but it was okay nevertheless. On a side note, this game was developed by Media Vision, the creators of Wild Arms, and published by Gaijin Works, whose director was the main guy in Working Designs. Fun trivia, huh? Anyway, fan of Summon Night or not, I think this is a pretty decent strategy RPG and a hidden gem on both systems. Wild Arms 4. It still stands today as one of the least beloved titles in the series, but that doesn't make it a bad game. In fact, it's pretty damn decent. I enjoyed it and finished it and still recommend it. What people didn't like was the sudden change in the battle system from regular turn-based to an elemental hex system. You move on these hexagons in order to utilize the attributes in your favor. Both enemies and allies can stand on the same hexes together, which can be either an advantage or a disadvantage. It's always best to have your characters in a separate hex unless you want to heal or buff them all at the same time. Another thing fans disliked was that the Wild West vibes that characterized the series was kinda gone. It focused more on a modern setting with science fiction elements. In fact, it follows Jude Maverick, who's living in a sphere town floating in the sky above Filgaia. Upon being invaded by the army and rescuing a kidnapped girl called Yuli, they'll join forces with other characters to travel Filgaia and fight off the army. Don't turn down this game just because it's different. It's still a good game despite being a bit of a black sheep in the Wild Arms family. Black Rock Shooter. This PSP exclusive is another weird-ass RPG based on an anime series. It's actually a part of a media franchise that got famous thanks to mere illustrations. But anyway, it's a post-apocalyptic story that takes place in a ruined city with a small platoon force. You control this mysterious girl in a battle system that plays in turns but also in real time. It's vastly different than the old Final Fantasy games, but the real time works kinda like in them. First, you gotta shoot the enemies constantly to stagger them, but once you run out of ammo, you'll have to reload. Turns will then be interrupted by your foes, but you'll have a chance to dodge their attacks or defend against them. Boss fights work exactly the same, but with some weird twists, only featured in a few of them though. The other battle system involves the bike missions. You'll literally be racing your bike while shooting enemies and evading obstacles. All of these missions are mandatory. The controls are basic, but since the action is fast, I had a hard time memorizing the patterns. Overall, it's a very solid game, only with some flaws. It's cool to see a mix of turn-based and racing in one game though. Labyrinth of Refrain, Coven of Dusk. Created by Nippon Ichi Software, it's a weird RPG where you assume the role of a book. Your owner, the Twisted Witch of Dronia, commands you to navigate an allegedly cursed labyrinth. With the help of several minions known as puppets that you create and customize, off you go to a dungeon crawler adventure. Battles are turn-based with one or several parties of these characters that you control. I like the graphic design here and the art style, brimming with life unlike many other RPGs of its genre. I wouldn't worry too much about the wacky story, but it pays off to enjoy its silly comedic nature. Overall, Labyrinth of Refrain is a fun experience and a cool hidden gem on the PlayStation 4. Sands of Destruction. Another one that's not that hidden is Sands of Destruction, especially since it was very popular when it first came out, and now it's become sort of like a forgotten gem. Many people from the Chronos series worked in this awesome turn-based RPG, such as Masato Kato on the script and Yasunori Mitsuda on the music. Hell, there was even an anime and a manga based on it. Anyway, here you take part in a mysterious plan about destroying the world, with the main character actually having the power to do so. This means that you indirectly play as the bad guys instead of the good ones. I mean, if Masato Kato did the story, you can easily expect a very well written plot. It also has a very cool and interesting cast of characters, which is the part that I like the most. Battles are played in turns, with your party members at the right side of the screen. This happens in a combat system that is not very deep, to be honest, but it delivers anyway. At least it's fluid and engaging with some really neat features. Give this game a try if you can. Shining Tears. Your amnesiac protagonist with mysterious dark powers will join a mercenary group trying to defend the city from the evil Rumvale army. Sounds cliché, I know, but I guarantee it's one of those stories that get better the more you play it. Basically, you'll go through occasional small missions to advance the story, until eventually you'll unlock the main one per chapter. These are long, challenging, and usually with a boss waiting at the end. As you can see, there's only one party member you can take with you per battle. Some will work better against certain types of enemies, so it's up to you to decide who to bring with you on what missions. I recommend sticking with only one or two, but that's just my opinion. The game has a 2-player local cooperative mode, so it's obviously best to play it with somebody else. Overall, this is a fantastic RPG, somewhat forgotten, but definitely a great hidden gem. Spectral Force 3. Another exclusive on the 360 is this very obscure game from a very obscure series. They're all connected and take place in the same universe, but there's no need to play one to understand the other. Each has their own cast of characters, fighting in the never-ending war between several kingdoms, empires, and races. In this third entry, you play as a group of mercenaries, and eventually you must choose an army to fight for. Doing so changes the route, the ending, and the extra party members you'll recruit. Combat revolves around grid-based maps with the usual spectral combos for your characters, although other features come from regular strategy RPGs. It's hard like all the other games in this series, which means it's also pretty grindy, but I found this one to be the easiest of them all. Great game here. If you like tactical RPGs, this is a must play if you own a 360. Trinity Souls of Zilol. I've talked about this hack and slash RPG many times before to help it escape from its absolute obscurity. I think it's an excellent game and definitely the best in the list in my opinion. You follow the story of Arius, a half-elf seeking revenge against his grandfather for mercilessly killing Arius' father. So he becomes a gladiator first and then an adventurer to get as powerful as he can for the final confrontation. Of course, several characters will be involved to twist the drama and offer a different perspective. Especially Dagda and Celine, your only two party members. You can switch to them at any time, and of course they control differently with their own unique skills and elemental attacks. And speaking about elemental attacks, that's what makes this game so hard. It has an easy mode, but I played it on normal just so I could measure its challenge. Anyway, I was saying that it's very challenging because you need to exploit the enemy's weaknesses, but the chance to hit some of the elite monsters or the bosses is very slim, so you need to be fast as you can. Especially since some of them can kill you in just a few hits and have tons of HP themselves. Other than that, you'll face some small puzzles and fight a variety of monsters in every area, but it's no big deal. Give this obscure gem a chance, it is strongly recommended for hardcore gamers. Children of Zodiacs. This is an indie strategy RPG by Canadian studio Cardboard Utopia. They sure love cards, as this game revolves around using them for everything. It's on every modern system except PS5 and Series X. You play as a band of poor orphan thieves that live in a really messed up dystopia. The rich heavily oppresses the poor, leaving clans and even sects run rampart. So your main characters plan to steal a priceless relic one day, but of course everything goes wrong and they get involved into all sorts of trouble. The combat in this game takes place in terrain-affected areas. Characters move on grids, but sometimes, the higher they are, or if they attack from behind, the more damage they'll cause. However, every action besides moving is governed by cards and dice. Your characters have a bunch of cards at their disposal, but you have to spend every other turn to get more. Once you run out of cards, you spend another turn to reshuffle the deck. During your turn, you move and then you select one card, be it for healing, attacking, buffing, etc. But you have to roll the dice, which will decide the effectiveness of it. I love this combat, but it does have its huge problems. One, it's very hard, and there's only 2 difficulty modes. One that is normal, and one to make every enemy always at your level. The latter is completely useless because it makes grinding pointless and therefore it's even harder. You want to outlevel the enemies here, and even then it'll still be quite challenging. Some penalties like the status effects, and without you being able to heal most of them, enemies being too close or lured easily, it just feels very cheap sometimes. I still recommend this game though, just keep in mind the map design and enemy AI are quite unbalanced sometimes. Dragon Quest Heroes 2. I'm a big fan of both Dragon Quest Heroes games, but I realized I've only covered the second game once. In this game, completely unrelated to its predecessor apparently, once again you choose a male or female character with a preset personality. That's right, no silent protagonist here. Characters from other Dragon Quest games have been mysteriously transported to this world where most monsters coexist peacefully with humans. However, it's a world in the brink of war among different kingdoms, with some dark forces in the middle pulling the strings. This is an action RPG where you got one big town to do everything: buy stuff, trade metals, increase abilities, accept side quests, talk to your party members, talk to people, etc. After every mission you'll be back here. These missions are done either in the overworld or in dungeons or ruins. Just like the first game, it's got a warrior-style combat, where you fight against hordes of enemies, both regular and elite, with a party of 4 active members. With one button you can switch to any of them whenever you want, and they all play very differently. So combat is awesome here, especially because it doesn't feel as mindless as in most warrior games. It was included in my Rage Quit video because it has some really unnerving boss battles and escort missions, but leaving that aside, this is a terrific sequel.